Well, again, I'm not as deep an expert on that as I am on vaccines.
Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them.
We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
For the world at large, normalcy only returns when we've largely vaccinated the entire global population.
Welcome everyone, I'm Spiro, thanks for tuning in, and let's just cut right to the chase. Last week, a top WHO, World Health Organization official stated that it's time for authorities to come to your home to see who's infected and take them away.
That ability not only to isolate cases, but to rapidly detect illness in the context and remove those contacts should they become sick was a central part of that. And as he said, that wasn't, they're using apps now to do that. They're testing apps, but they didn't do it with apps in Singapore. They did that with community workers, with public health workers, visiting the houses, checking on people, checking their health status every day and saying, how are you? Have you got a fever? Have you got a cough? And if a contact has developed a cough or a fever, they were taken immediately for testing. So yes, we need the information technology tools. They help. They are not the solution. Right now, we don't have an alternative to what we would have considered in the old days boot leather epidemiology. Public health practitioners, doctors, nurses, community workers working with communities to detect cases at community level. And the most likely person to become a case is someone who's been a significant contact of another case. And at the moment, in most parts of the world, due to lockdown, most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them in a safe and dignified manner.
That was Dr. Michael J. Ryan, the current executive director for the World Health Organization's Health Emergency Program. You may recognize him from Event 201.
The scenario you will be presented with this morning could easily become one shared reality one day. I fully expect that we will be confronted by a fast-moving, highly lethal pandemic of a respiratory pathogen.
For those who are not up to speed, Event 201 was a simulation of a global coronavirus outbreak conducted by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Economic Forum, and the Johns Hopkins Center, just 6 weeks before the actual coronavirus outbreak was first reported.
Good morning, and thank you all for being part of this Pandemic Emergency Board. We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic, and there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together. The global community has been working to respond to this pandemic since its recognition, but as health and economic impacts have become more severe, the World Economic Forum has convened this board because of your combined expertise, your backgrounds, and your global voice. We will need all of you to help us respond to urgent policy crises that are emerging. The purpose of this board is to advise leaders in national governments, global business, and international organizations on the response to the pandemic, particularly focused on international problems that require collaboration between business and government. Your recommendations will be critical and will be promulgated and communicated broadly at the end of this meeting.
Now, the participants of the exercise included the United Nations, the World Bank, the American and Chinese CDC, the former deputy director of the CIA, that's right, and vaccine manufacturers, the media, and several others. I covered that in a previous report. I'll leave a link below. Now, in my latest report, I showed how Bill Gates basically owns the World Health Organization and is extremely influential in the American health agencies, such as the National Institute for Health and the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, through his multi-million-dollar business partnerships and donations, or foundation partnerships. however you want to look at it. Now, I also showed how Gates and others have also been openly calling for global governance, mass vaccinations of people, before the world can basically go back to what they call, or what we used to call, quote, normal, and come out of this lockdown, essentially holding the world hostage. And now Gates has essentially pocketed Dr. Tony Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx, two top members of Trump's White House coronavirus task force. It is also interesting to note that this World Health Organization official has a long history of working with or for Bill Gates and has already carried out mass vaccine programs. Now, right here on the WHO website, we can clearly see that Michael J. Ryan worked with Bill Gates, the World Health Organization, UNICEF, which of course both fall under the United Nations, the US CDC, and the US Institute of Medicine, and many others, to carry out 44 mass vaccine campaigns on 25 million children, reportedly in 8 different countries, utilizing 140 million polio vaccines. Now, this is profound. This man, in partnership with the United Nations and Bill Gates, has already conducted mass vaccine programs. He has experience, and now he's in charge over at the World Health Organization of their emergencies program. Anyways, so that's a major role. Now, speaking of polio vaccines, if we look back at history, we can see right here, according to an official NIH, National Institute of Health.gov website, they openly admit that for a period of 6 years between 1955 and 1961, contaminated polio vaccines were given to 98 million people, which has been documented right here, again, on this official NIH.gov website. And it clearly states that it caused cancer for many people due to the presence of contaminated monkey cell cultures used in the preparation of the polio vaccine. Now, no one really knows how many people got cancer and died because of this, but it must have been enough to actually get the government to quietly admit this. Now, most people have no idea what they put into these vaccines, but it's well documented, again, according to this official .gov website, that they found correlations between this vaccination, the polio vaccination, in conjunction with this tainted polio vaccine 20 to 40 years after people received the vaccination. And now we have this new coronavirus vaccine that they are not only openly admitting but boasting the fact that this is the most rushed into production vaccine in history. And we're all supposed to just like line up and roll up our sleeves. And I don't fucking think so. It's not happening with me at all. Zero chance. Now, who knows what the long-term results will be, as we can see in history from this previous polio vaccine, because there are no long-term studies for any of these vaccines. And now this World Health Organization official is in the position to lead yet another Bill Gates global vaccine program. Now, I'm not saying he led that one with the contaminated polio vaccines, but he has led recent polio vaccine campaigns under the United Nations in partnership with Bill Gates, and he is currently in the position to follow out Bill Gates' grand vision to vaccinate every man, woman, and child on the planet.
But you don't have a choice. People act like you have a choice. People don't feel like going to the stadium when they might get infected. You know, it's not the government who's saying, okay, just ignore this disease. And, you know, people are deeply affected by seeing these deaths, by knowing they could be part of the transmission chain, and old people, their parents, their grandparents could be affected by this. And so you don't get to say ignore what's going on here. There will be the ability, particularly in rich countries, to open up if things are done well over the next few months. But for the world at large, normalcy only returns when we've largely vaccinated the entire global population.
But also building a global DNA database and issuing the global population a digital ID that will likely be integrated at some point in the near future, in my opinion, based on my research, not only to include your medical records, but all of your banking info, your wallet, your ID, your keys, everything. This is, again, based on my research. I've covered this and documented this in multiple previous reports, which include source links for everything that I'm talking about here. And when I say my opinion, they're currently working on these programs already. And these programs could easily be tied together, very easily. And why wouldn't they? We're moving into this completely new digital financial system. It's coming here on the horizon. All of the central banks have been talking about it and working with it in partnership and in conjunction with the United Nations. Please see my previous reports for more info on this. I've shown their own documents, their own websites. I'm not just making this up. As always, the links will be provided below. And on top of all that, now we have Dr. Deborah Birx, who sits on the board of a group that receives billions of dollars from Bill Gates, which I covered in a previous video, admitting that no matter what your pre-existing health conditions are, if you test positive for the coronavirus and you die, they will attribute your death to the coronavirus statistics.
Can you talk about your concerns about deaths being misreported by coronavirus because of either lack of testing or standards for how they're characterized?
So I think in this country, we've taken a very liberal approach to mortality. And I think the reporting here has been pretty straightforward over the last 5 to 6 weeks. Prior to that, when there wasn't testing in January and February, that's a very different situation and unknown. There are other countries that if you had a pre-existing condition, and let's say the virus caused you to go to the ICU and then have a heart or kidney problem, some countries are recording that as a heart issue or a kidney issue and not a COVID-19 death. Right now, we're still recording it, and the great thing about having forms that come in and a form that has the ability to mark it as COVID-19 infection, the intent is right now that if someone dies with COVID-19, we are counting that as a COVID-19 death.
Can you be sure? I mean, you hear from coroners that that's not necessarily the case. Are you sure? How can you be confident about that? And is there any concern that it skews the data that you're trying to collect in terms of projections and
thus officially inflating the numbers? They basically just admitted this, that they are inflating the numbers, in my opinion, to justify these extreme lockdowns, these searches, these forced quarantines, and possibly forced vaccinations. And now they want you, and now they're openly admitting, at least the World Health Organization is, they are openly admitting that they want to come to your home, see who's infected, who they deem to be infected, not even take into consideration the major issues with the tests themselves, and take those people away. Now, this comes from the same United Nations and World Health Organization, which has praised China's hardcore authoritarian lockdown, where they were literally welding people's doors shut and dragging them away, kicking and screaming from their homes, some of which reportedly are still missing at this point. And if that's not enough, the United Nations just accepted China to the UN Human Rights Council. This may be a good time to remind everyone of the fact that China has detained about 1 million Uyghur Muslims, being forcefully detained in the equivalent of concentration camps for reasons unrelated to this declared global pandemic. This was taking place long before this outbreak occurred. And if you think at the end of the day that there is no chance that this type of behavior is not only possible here in the United States, again, history will teach us otherwise. During World War II, the United States government rounded up over 100,000 people of Japanese descent and threw them into the equivalent of concentration camps against the law and against their wills.
Motivated by vocal outcries from politicians and military officials, FDR signed Executive Order 9066, empowering the U.S. Army to designate areas from which any or all persons may be excluded. He later formed the War Relocation Authority to establish 10 permanent camps housing nearly 120,000 Japanese Americans, mostly from the western United States. 2/3 of those interned were native-born American citizens. With only 6 days to dispose of their possessions, residents were forced to sell their belongings and even their homes for small sums of money. Internment camps were often situated in isolated deserts, prone to harsh weather, and surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers.
Plus, we have covered right here on this channel the Rockefeller Lockstep document, which championed the Chinese authoritarian style lockdown in response to a major global pandemic, which is basically the blueprint we have here. Again, another report I will include in the links below. Now, there may come a day when you get pulled over. They're not going to ask you for your license and your registration. They're just going to scan you. They'll probably be able to scan you from their cars, their police vehicles. Now, they want everyone to unquestionably obey these draconian COVID 1984 measures. And if you step out of line, they will pay your neighbors to rat on you and essentially be a paid spy for the world government, because that is exactly what they are doing right now.
We need to make sure that everybody continues to let us know where those folks are. If you've observed recurring violations of the Safer at Home order, please continue to let us know at coronavirus.lacity.org/business violation. You know the old expression about snitches? Well, in this case, snitches get rewards. We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
Now, U.S. Attorney General William Barr has just voiced his concerns regarding the Bill Gates proposal of a digital vaccine certificate, stating that he is, quote, very concerned about the slippery slope in terms of continuing encroachments on personal liberty, end quote. Really? Now, when was the last time the U.S. government, or any government for that matter, actually concerned with citizens' right to privacy? After all, they have been the ones tracking everything you do, everywhere you go, and everything you say since at least 9/11 or shortly thereafter. Now, Attorney General Barr falls miserably short, in my opinion, firstly for not clarifying that these brand new RNA vaccines, which have, keep in mind, never before been used in humans, which are, again, keep in mind, being rushed into production right now as the safety regulations are being rolled back, will not be mandatory. It would have been good to, hey, reassure the public, don't worry, if you want to have the vaccine, it's there, you can take it. If not, this will not be forced on you. I know we should all just be able to assume that. We will not and should not have any medical treatment forced upon us, but under these current circumstances, considering that Bill Gates sounds like he wants and is planning to vaccinate the entire population of the planet, that would have been a good thing to just kind of include in there. Now, secondly, Barr leaves the door open with his broad and general statement saying, quote, however, appropriate, reasonable steps are fine, end quote. Now, who decides these appropriate and reasonable steps? Is it the taxpayer? Is it the voter? Is it the Gates-controlled World Health Organization? Or is it the Gates-controlled, or at least heavily influenced, White House Coronavirus Task Force? Now, never forget, it was this task force who told Trump that he had to shut down the country. And he did. And you can see that he is visibly pissed off about this in his a lot of his daily press conferences. People keep waiting for someone else to save them, waiting for a leader to tell them what to do, believing that a knight in shining armor is going to come to the rescue at the last minute. Trust the plan, they say. Now, the only person who's going to save you is yourself. It's up to you, the individual. Nobody's coming to save you. Not Trump, not the government, not QAnon. Trust the plan? What plan? The only plan I see rolling out right now is global governance and the end of our way of life as we know it. Now, at the end of the day, it's up to you, each and every one of us, who can see what is unfolding right now before our eyes. Now, you have to ask yourself, are you going to roll over and submit? Are you going to let them come to your homes and take your husbands, your mothers, your children? If it comes to that, they're openly talking about this right now. This is what they're saying. I just showed you the clips of the lead doctor at the World Health Organization who is openly saying this. He's the head of their emergencies program. He is the head of their global vaccine program at this point. A man on record working with Bill Gates conducting these operations, saying they need to come to your homes and it's for the greater good and they're going to take people away. Well, I tell you what, I will never submit personally. If they think that they can come to my home and lay a finger on me or my family against our will, they have another thing coming. I will literally do everything in my power to protect myself, my family first. Everything in my power. Be sure to follow me on BitChute. It's a video platform which does not censor, because the reality is that this YouTube channel could be gone. It could disappear any day. And if we start to see these internet blackouts, please be ready for anything. Now, I'm not just saying this as someone will accuse me of trying to fear monger, but we seriously need to consider this, that this could be potentially, hypothetically used to round up dissenters. Now, we've seen this type of stuff happen in the past. Now, they have openly suggested intentional internet blackouts to stop what they deemed as misinformation, spreading of misinformation during Event 201, the pandemic coronavirus simulation that happened just before this outbreak took place.
Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
And we've already seen the media floating the idea that the internet is at its breaking point right now due to this crisis and everyone being home and being online. Now, if you think what I'm saying is far-fetched, ask yourself this. If someone would have told you a month ago that the entire United States would be on lockdown and that half of the world's entire population would be on lockdown, would you have considered that to be far-fetched? Now, they've already been going door to door in the United States looking for people who have fled their designated quarantine lockdown zones. I mean, this has been in the news, people. Please be ready. Please have a plan. It's up to you. Please take your own lives and futures and, please take responsibility. That's all I'm saying. Take it into your own hands. Don't believe or trust or anything, because you never know what's going to happen. They want you to be dependent on this system. They want you to be terrified. They want you to, they want to do anything that they can to justify the actions that they are taking right now, to instill that fear, to instill that obedience. Take measures in your own hands. I'm not saying go start a revolution. I'm saying take responsibility for your life. Take responsibility for your family, protecting your family, feeding your family. Now, I'm not trying to preach to you, but just please, these are extreme times right now. And I appreciate everyone out there spreading the information, sharing the information, and contributing your thoughts and suggestions below. We need to have open dialogue about what is taking place, about what we are seeing happen across the country, across the entire planet. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. And in my opinion, this is a concerted effort, an organized operation unfolding right now before our eyes. I'm Spiro. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more. I have some big reports in the works right now, plus some quick but very important updates lined up. So be sure to stay tuned, subscribe, share the information, and I'll see you soon.
Well, again, I'm not as deep an expert on that as I am on vaccines.
Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them.
We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
For the world at large, normalcy only returns when we've largely vaccinated the entire global population.